Hello, it's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the King's profound concern over allegations against his brother Andrew. Buckingham Palace says it stands ready to support the police if approached, amid new claims against the former prince. Today, William and Kate said they are deeply concerned by the revelations in the Epstein files and their thoughts remain focused on the victims. Also tonight, the government wheels out its big guns to back the Prime Minister. Sir Keir Starmer fighting for his political life, with the Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar calling for him to step down. Well, that sparked a flurry of support from cabinet ministers and the former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. Also tonight, police apologised to a survivor of serial killer Steve Wright, but refused to commit to an inquiry over claims that his other victims would not have died if she had been taken seriously. And more flood warnings in southern England and Wales tonight as the record-breaking wet winter continues. We'll find out what's caused some areas to have rain every single day this year and when it's going to stop. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, we start tonight with that astonishing intervention from Buckingham Palace, which says the King stands ready to support police investigating claims against Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The statement comes after another day in which the King was challenged by a member of the public about his brother. The Palace says the King has made clear his profound concern over the allegations, echoing the words of the Prince and Princess of Wales. The couple issued their first statement about the Epstein files this morning, ahead of Prince William's arrival in Saudi Arabia on what is arguably the most important foreign trip of his life. A warning: this report from our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills contains flash photography.
Prince William had only been in Saudi a matter of hours, but this statement from Buckingham Palace clearly couldn't wait. It was time to face head-on the latest controversy from the Epstein files. The King has made clear, it said, in words and through unprecedented actions, his profound concern at the allegations which continue to come to light in respect of Mr Mountbatten-Windsor's conduct. While the specific claims in question are for Mr Mountbatten-Windsor to address, if we are approached by Thames Valley Police, we stand ready to support them, as you would expect. As was previously stated, Their Majesty's thoughts and sympathies have been and remain with the victims of any and all forms of abuse. This is what it was referring to. Emails that suggest that when Andrew was a UK trade envoy, he shared information with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Thames Valley Police say they're now assessing that claim. There's been no response from Andrew. You do wonder, though, if this was the final straw for the King. There's been so much speculation about whether the royal family have in any way put pressure on Andrew to talk publicly. Within this statement, they do talk about questions that maybe he has to answer, suggesting that possibly behind the scenes there have been some very difficult conversations. But ultimately what this statement says is the royal family know they cannot stay silent on this issue, and that's because it risks further damage to the wider monarchy. We'd already had another unexpected statement ahead of William's arrival. A Kensington Palace spokesperson saying that the Prince and Princess of Wales have been deeply concerned by the continuing revelations. Their thoughts remain focused on the victims. Released partly in the hope that they could draw attention back to his visit to Saudi. As Buckingham Palace prepared to press the button on their statement, William was rubbing shoulders with his counterpart, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. An extra level of hospitality from one future king to another at a difficult time. What both of them do and say matters, and for William at the moment, that means the Epstein files. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in Riyadh.
Well, Rhiannon joins us now. She is following Prince William on this trip to Saudi. And Rhiannon, the fact that Buckingham Palace put out this statement while the Prince is on a huge foreign trip itself speaks volumes.
Yeah, it's huge, and you can't understate how important it is that they have had to do this while William is here in Saudi. He literally had been here for just a few hours. When they pressed the button on that statement, they clearly felt that more words needed to be out there. We needed to again hear the King's sentiments, and we also needed to hear that strong message that, yes, Thames Valley Police are now looking into these allegations that Andrew may well have passed information to Jeffrey Epstein. And if they need to, then Buckingham Palace will assist in those investigations. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, of course, continuing to deny any allegations against him over the years. And since these latest Epstein files have been released, he hasn't said a word. But also, I've been thinking about it since it was released a couple of hours ago. It was one thing hearing from the Prince and Princess of Wales, but it was quite another thing hearing again from Buckingham Palace. And I think this, for me, feels like, in some ways, quite a seismic change in the approach of the monarchy. Of course, over the years, while we've been talking about this Epstein scandal, it was previously a mother, so Andrew's mother, the Queen, who was having to deal with it. Now, again, it's another family member, it's his brother. But again, for both of them, it's always been about that tussle of what is most important, the family or the institution. And what you see in this statement today is the King and the Palace very clearly saying, look, the reputation of the monarchy has got to come first. And in some ways, you see William here in Saudi. What he is trying to do is what the monarchy is meant to be all about, promoting UK PLC. And ultimately, his work here is being completely overshadowed by those allegations against his uncle. It's a really difficult time for the royal family. They will just be hoping that this latest statement is enough to make people see that they are not completely burying their heads in the sand.
Rhiannon, thank you. Rhiannon Mills joining us there. Well, let's take a deeper look at these latest allegations against the former Prince Andrew. Here's our data and forensics correspondent, Tom Cheshire.
Police are assessing new claims about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor as a result of these emails from the latest Epstein files. So, what's this all about? Well, for a long time, Andrew, Prince Andrew as he was back then, was a trade envoy for the British government. In November 2010, Andrew appears to have forwarded government reports to Jeffrey Epstein, only minutes after they were sent to him by an aide. There were visit reports for Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong and Shenzhen as a result of his trip to Southeast Asia. This is when Andrew is believed to have been staying at Epstein's townhouse in New York. Then, around a month later, there's another email. This is an email sent by Andrew to Jeffrey Epstein, and he attaches what he says is a confidential brief about international investment opportunities in Helmand Province in Afghanistan. He writes, I am going to offer this elsewhere in my network, including Abu Dhabi, but would be very interested in your comments, views or ideas as to whom I could also usefully show this to attract some interest. Andrew was forced to step down as a trade envoy in 2011, mainly as a result of his continuing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, who'd be convicted in 2008 for soliciting child prostitution. The Thames Valley Police have said they're looking into these new claims. We can confirm receipt of this report and are assessing the information in line with our established procedures. Andrew denies wrongdoing, and we don't know how sensitive, how confidential these documents were. But it's worth bearing in mind that Peter Mandelson had to resign from the House of Lords and is facing a police investigation because of claims that he passed on government information to Jeffrey Epstein. The Prince and Princess of Wales put out a statement saying they were deeply concerned by the ongoing revelations as the Prince made a trip to Saudi Arabia. Now, they might have been worried about the embarrassment, but it just shows how vast Jeffrey Epstein's network was, how far it spread. The Saudi Arabia is in these files too, specifically its Crown Prince and de facto ruler, Mohammed bin Salman. This is a photo from the latest release of Epstein and MBS, as he's commonly referred to. We don't have any context for it, and merely appearing in the files is no suggestion of wrongdoing. We can't say for sure, but it appears to have been taken on November the 8th, 2016, based on other documents in the Epstein files. Epstein also talked of his relationship with MBS in this email, in which he suggested the Crown Prince could vouch for him. Tell him to ask Nathan Myhrvold or bin Salman. Now again, just appearing in these files is no evidence of wrongdoing, and we can't tell whether that's Jeffrey Epstein boasting or whether there was a more concrete relationship. For all the drip of news scandal, at the heart of this, though, are the survivors. And they chose the biggest American platform, a Super Bowl television advert, to put out this message.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
Because she deserves the truth.
Because we all deserve the truth.
And so we're left in this slightly paradoxical situation. We have millions of documents, a string of scandals, and the sense from the survivors that we still do not have the full picture.
Well, let's bring in royal commentator Jenny Bond. Jenny, really good to see you this evening. I know you were listening there to Tom Cheshire's report. The allegations against the former prince are mounting up, and that royal mantra, never complain, never explain, is looking pretty weak right now.
It is indeed. I don't think it's any longer fit for purpose. And I think the Prince and Princess of Wales and now the King has made clear that they believe that you can't go on not explaining and not complaining. It was an extraordinary statement from Charles. And as Rhiannon was saying, it's the last thing that they want to do to further overshadow the Saudi trip, which already was being threatened with being almost obliterated by these Epstein scandals. But the thought that acting as trade envoy, a member of the royal family, could be passing confidential information, if he did, and it seems he did from those emails, to a man like Epstein, indeed to anybody, it's beyond the pale. It's absolutely extraordinary. And I don't think that the palace or the king would have dreamt for one moment in their worst nightmares that it would all come to this.
And Jenny, the statement the Buckingham Palace put out, the king, you know, expressing his sentiments about it as far as he can, but also saying that if the police were to come, and as far as we know, Thames Valley Police have not approached Buckingham Palace for any kind of questioning or cooperation as of yet, but essentially that statement saying that if they do, Buckingham Palace will, of course, cooperate. Almost an open invitation to the police. Look, if you have questions for us or the former Prince Andrew, come to us. Do you think that's the next step here?
Well, they're showing absolute transparency here. And they've already said that whether Andrew cooperates with the American authorities who are investigating Epstein was a matter between him and his conscience. I think they thought that was probably enough, but it's not enough. They do need to exert pressure. Perhaps they have already, but to show us, I think, that they've exerted pressure on Andrew. Personally, I think that they should complain to Andrew quite vehemently that he is and has been damaging the monarchy, and explain to him in very clear terms that he really cannot expect to be kept fed, watered, housed at his brother's expense for life unless he cooperates with the American authorities. It may well be that they've lent on him that hard already, but I think we perhaps all ought to know about it.
How much pressure do you think that Prince William will be exerting behind the scenes?
Well, I think the palace are always quite keen to say that it is the king who is leading on this, and it has been the king and Camilla who have led on it. When the king stripped him of all his titles, they made it clear that their thoughts were with those victims and survivors of abuse, and they've repeated that today. And I think that William has allowed his father, he must allow his father to take the lead, but I think he has been pushing quite hard at the door of taking stronger action against his uncle. I mean, you only have to look at those pictures, don't you, of William at the Duchess of Kent's funeral, looking so deeply awkward as Andrew sort of sidled up to him, and he was completely snub-blanked by his nephew. I don't think that William ever wants to be in the same airspace as Andrew again.
In terms of what happens next, it does seem that this is going to be long and drawn out. I mean, you know, how long have we been talking about this scandal now? We've been talking about it for years, let's face it, and it has reached this point. And you always think with the latest drop of files or the latest allegation, this will be the crunch point. This will be the crunch point where, you know, the former Prince Andrew or someone else mentioned in these files actually, you know, comes forward to offer what they know, because as we say, being in the files, there's no proof of any wrongdoing. But for victims, if you were in and around that man, you should tell authorities what you know and let them decide whether it's useful or not. Do you think we will see a point where the former Prince Andrew is either questioned by police, if not heading to the States?
Well, it's certainly looking that way. You have to actually remember that this complaint to the police was put forward by the anti-monarchy group Republic. But nevertheless, it's backed up by what was in the Epstein files that allegedly Andrew did pass information, sensitive, confidential information to Epstein. But there's a lot of pressure coming from Republic now. I mean, some of these hecklers who've been, not all of them maybe, but some of the hecklers who've been out when Charles is around have been Republic supporters. Nothing wrong with that. But I think that it's going to be now up to the police to not only, well, they are assessing the information to decide whether they want to take action. That could be the next step. We could see him in court. I think for Andrew, the first and only remedy, partial remedy he could have now is to cooperate with the inquiry in America. He doesn't have to go to America for that. He could do it virtually. That might just give him one tiny scrap of, well, honour is too much of a word, but decency. But he has acted in such a cocky way recently that well, I personally feel that the arrogance that has been in his character all of his life that I've known him has not yet been knocked out of him.
OK. Jenny Bond, good to have your thoughts this evening. Thank you so much. That's Jenny Bond, there, former royal correspondent and royal expert, talking to us here on Sky News Tonight. Thank you. And now the Prime Minister apologised to his MPs tonight as he fights for his political life over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States and, of course, his links to Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Cabinet Ministers and the former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner all came out in support of Sir Keir today after Labour's leader in Scotland told him to follow his former Chief of Staff and his Communications Director out of the door of number 10. A warning that this report from Sky's political editor Beth Rigby contains flash photography.
The distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
Take that in. Labour's Scottish leader calling time on Keir Starmer. Anas Sarwar, the first senior figure to break cover, plunging the Prime Minister into the greatest moment of jeopardy yet.
The situation in Downing Street is not good enough. There have been too many mistakes. They promised they were going to be different, but too much has happened. I need to decide what I'm willing to accept and what I'm willing to tolerate. Thank you.
Starmer in number 10, now intolerable for Anas Sarwar. This a body blow for a Prime Minister already reeling from the departure of his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, on Sunday, and his Head of Communications, Tim Allen, shortly before Sarwar broke ranks. With number 10 in freefall, this moment could have marked the end for Starmer. But he was thrown a lifeline by a cabinet in no mood now for a coup. An hour after Sarwar called for Starmer to resign, the entire cabinet had endorsed him to stay in a flurry of tweets signalling their support. Would-be leadership contenders also rowing in behind Starmer. Angela Rayner tweeting, "I urge all my colleagues to come together, remember our values and put them into practice as a team. The PM has my full support." Wes Streeting also reluctant to call time on Starmer. Does Keir Starmer need to resign?
No, let's give Keir, just give Keir that chance. Let him set out how he's going to lead us forward.
The Health Secretary also trying to give himself a chance at any future tilt at the Labour leadership, deciding to publish his last 6 months of correspondence with Peter Mandelson and telling me he has nothing to hide. I've got these messages here. There is a lot of genuine intimacy here and friendship. You know, Wes to you, to Peter, great pitch, lovely photos in the time Peter sends you a kiss. Well done on the BBC, very good kiss. Are you planning to visit the US this year? You hope so, exclamation mark, kiss. Are you embarrassed by that? I mean, that's quite an intimate friendship, isn't it?
Do I resile from friendship with Peter Mandelson? Yes, absolutely, given his behaviour and what he's done. Do I resile from those messages? No.
How embarrassed are you by these WhatsApps between you and him?
I'm embarrassed to have known Peter Mandelson.
There are plenty more in the party not just embarrassed, but angry that Mandelson was let back in.
What this has been Beth, is unfortunately a centuries-long story that the voices of women and girls were, ignored by a few rich and powerful men who felt they could act with impunity.
It feels like number 10 is in freefall. Can the Prime Minister survive?
Yes.
You really believe that?
I believe he can and he should. But I do believe that we need to steady the ship, but we also need to change course, because the public wants to see change in the country. They want a government and a party that they can trust, that they believe we need to clean up politics, that they believe that violence against women and girls is unacceptable. And I believe the Prime Minister should be given the space to make sure that it's not just his words, but the action.
I cannot overstate to you how pivotal today has been. Had some in the Cabinet decided not to back Starmer, well, he would have faced a leadership challenge or perhaps been forced to resign. That didn't happen, but he is badly, perhaps fatally wounded from all of this. But with no one in the Cabinet going in for the kill at the moment, well, that means that Starmer can at least try to battle on.
Prime Minister, your message to the country tonight?
His cabinet and party now in control, and Starmer's work cut out to persuade them to let him stay. A Prime Minister grateful for the reprieve, but under no illusions it may not last. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, let's go to Westminster now, and our chief political correspondent John Craig is standing by. It's been quite the day for Sir Keir Starmer. Beth Rigby bringing us the story of a rather bumpy one for him today. But there was a meeting that he had with Labour MPs that would determine whether he got any sleep tonight, John. Do we know how it went?
Yes, he obviously talked about party unity and begged for more time. It was the meeting, the regular Monday meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party, which he actually spoke at just 2 or 3 weeks ago. But this was obviously an emergency appearance by the Prime Minister. The room was absolutely packed. Where there were grandees from the Blair years like David Blunkett, John Reid there, Neil Kinnock, the former leader, was there, lots of Labour peers and, of course, the Labour MPs. It was packed. The entire Cabinet were there, including the two would-be Labour leaders who are likely to stand if he is toppled. Angela Rayner turned up in a very bright pink suit, in a very good mood, smiling, saying hello to people. And Wes Streeting was also at the meeting. The Prime Minister, on the other hand, turned up after leaving Downing Street with a face like thunder, didn't speak to anyone in the corridor, headed straight in. However, as soon as he got in the room, big standing ovation, lots of applause. He took 44 questions. Meeting went on for about an hour and a quarter. And I can tell you a flavour of what he said. He said... He started by saying he took full responsibility for Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador. The decision was wrong, he admitted. He paid tribute to Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff, who quit on Sunday. 25 years of service to Labour, he said. He paid tribute to the work he did for the party, and he said that they wouldn't have won the election without him. He said that over the last few days. He went on to say, change goes far beyond who sits where in number 10. Now, then came this admission. Relations with the Parliamentary Labour Party haven't been open or inclusive enough, he said. Now, there have been stories about how he hardly ever talks to Labour MPs, doesn't know their names, all that sort of stuff. He's been holding these charm-offensive receptions at Chequers over the last few weeks. So he made that admission tonight. He said, turning in on ourselves is turning in on the country. He said that he'd fought to change the Crown Prosecution Service as DPP, Director of Public Prosecution, and fought to change the Labour Party. And he said he wasn't prepared to walk away from his mandate to the country. And it was said that he spoke passionately about having the most working-class cabinet behind him. And he finished by talking about the fight against reform and politics against grievance. As long as I have breath in my body, I'll be in this fight. And he talked about Anas Sarwar, obviously, He talks about recognising the concerns about things that have not gone right, and Anas Sarwar had shared his thoughts. Well, he certainly did. Anas Sarwar turned assassin, pulled the trigger really, but the cabinet fought back, and he lives to fight another day.
He does indeed. OK, John, thank you, John Craig, there with the latest in Westminster. Let's bring in now Kevin Schofield, political editor at HuffPost. Kevin, good to see you tonight. John, just reading out some of what Sir Keir Starmer had to say to Labour MPs and Labour peers tonight, saying, "I've won every fight I've ever been in and I'm not prepared to walk away." What do you think of his day in Westminster today?
Yeah, it's been a real rollercoaster day for Keir Starmer. It began with an address to Number 10 staff. That's pretty unusual, basically telling them, you know, that they've got to keep unified and keep going forward with confidence. Then moments later, his Director of Communications, Tim Allen, resigned. Then we discovered that Anas Sarwar had called this emergency press conference for 2:30. That obviously set all sorts of speculation going. It emerged that he was going to call for Keir Starmer to resign. We all thought, to be honest with you, that this was part of a grand strategy, that others would then follow, that Anas Sarwar would be the first over the top, and that other MPs, maybe even other ministers, maybe even cabinet ministers might repeat those calls. And were that to happen, then that would obviously be very dangerous indeed for Keir Starmer. But as it turned out, no one followed Anas Sarwar. It was really, really bizarre. He was left isolated, high and dry, really, after such a bold declaration that Keir Starmer should resign. And then what followed then was, I think, Number 10 strong-arming the cabinet, the entire cabinet, to come out publicly and back the Prime Minister. So you got one after the other on X, cabinet minister after cabinet minister coming out and saying, "We back the Prime Minister." So weirdly, what started off as what looked like a really dangerous day for Keir Starmer, he's ended it probably stronger than he's been for quite some time.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You talk about his Chief of Staff and Director of Communications going earlier today. That doesn't really mean much to the public, but it's not the public that the Prime Minister has to win over at this stage, is it? It is the Labour MPs and peers. So just explain to us why those two men going was so significant.
Well, for one thing, it feeds this idea of chaos in Number 10. If people are leaving an organisation, generally speaking, it means it's not a happy ship. Now, Morgan McSweeney was the Chief of Staff to Keir Starmer. He went yesterday, but he was much more than that. He was his closest advisor. He'd been with him ever since he ran for the Labour leadership campaign. They worked together to get Keir Starmer elected, then to really change the party, carry out a purge, some would say, of those on the left, all the Corbynites. They were ostracised and kicked out the party, and they say to make them more electable. And the proof was in the pudding. You know, they won a landslide. And just last week, Keir Starmer stood up at Prime Minister's Questions and said that Morgan McSweeney had his full confidence in him, and that Morgan McSweeney had changed the party, and there wouldn't be a Labour government without him. So to lose such a key figure was a big blow, undoubtedly, for Keir Starmer. And then today, Tim Allen, again, you're right, your viewers won't have heard of Tim Allen, but he's the fourth Director of Communications in just 18 months that Keir Starmer has had, and now he's lost them all, which again just feeds into this notion that it's not a very happy ship. So although he's got through today, there's still very, very choppy waters ahead for him.
Yeah. Do you think he survived today because those who would perhaps succeed him weren't ready? I mean, if you look at them, Wes Streeting, we heard our political editor, Beth Rigby, there talking to him about his own links with Peter Mandelson. You had Angela Rayner today. You know, she's been front and centre for the last couple of days, but she's fresh from her own tax scandal. So there doesn't feel like there's anybody in the Labour Party that's ready to step in. And do you think this is a bit of a warning shot in terms of, you know, if this were to happen again, somebody better be ready? In fact, the fact that somebody wasn't, it sort of saves Sir Keir Starmer. Yeah,
and of course, if you look through history, Labour traditionally have not been very good at getting rid of leaders who are struggling. They never got rid of Jeremy Corbyn, despite their best efforts. They never got rid of Gordon Brown in the run-up to the 2010 election, even though there were several plots against him as well. So Keir Starmer's got history on his side, really. I still think there will be a challenge sooner rather than later. We've got the Gorton and Denton by-election on the 26th of February, which could go badly for Labour. That could be a trigger point. Then, of course, we've got the elections, Scotland, Wales and across England on May the 7th, which, if the polls are to be believed, look like they're going to be really bad for Labour as well. So again, I think that may well be a moment of real danger for Keir Starmer. But I think he'll just be relieved right now to have got through the last 24 hours and to give himself a bit of breathing space.
Kevin, really good to talk to you tonight. That's Kevin Schofield, political editor at HuffPost UK. Thank you. Still to come on the UK tonight, police apologise to the only surviving victim of the serial killer Steve Wright, who told Sky News others may have survived if police had taken her seriously.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Suffolk Police has apologised to the only surviving victim of serial killer Steve Wright, but stopped short of announcing an inquiry into their failings. Emily Doherty has told Sky News she was made to feel like a silly little girl after she reported Wright's attempted abduction of her back in 1999. And she believes that if police took her seriously, the women Steve Wright murdered could still be alive today. Sky's Emma Birchley has this report.
This is the moment serial killer Steve Wright was arrested for the murder of a schoolgirl more than 2 decades earlier.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Victoria Hall, which occurred between the early hours of Sunday the 19th of September and Friday the 24th of September 1999 in Suffolk. Okay, I'm also arresting you on suspicion of the attempted kidnap of Emily Doherty, which occurred around 4 a.m. on Saturday the 18th of September 1999 in Felixstowe.
They'd be the first crimes Wright would ever admit, sentenced on Friday to 40 years for murdering Vicky, who was just 17 years old. But what's come clear over the last week is the long list of potential missed opportunities, which meant a murderer was free to kill 5 more times, earning him the nickname the Suffolk Strangler.
Now Suffolk Police have said they're considering a review into how the case was dealt with back in 1999. It's something Emily Doherty would welcome after enduring a terrifying ordeal, escaping from Wright.
It's not for me, it's for the family. I'm here. I survived. They need to know why they didn't get answers sooner. It could have stopped other things from happening. There would be families not grieving now.
Vicky was kidnapped less than 24 hours later. Her family knows little is likely to have changed the outcome for her.
It's a lot of what ifs and buts and maybes. That will be up to the police, what they want to investigate internally. If it had been looked into in more detail, would have helped Victoria, we'll never know. Probably not, to be fair. It probably wouldn't have changed for her.
But 7 years later, it may have prevented the murder of 5 sex workers picked up in Ipswich and murdered by Wright. For Emily, there has been an apology of sorts.
We're really sorry that Emily doesn't feel that she had the service that she wanted back in 1999. What we're really clear on is that the information that she provided to those officers and the broader investigation team has been part of the circumstantial evidence that has enabled the constabulary to bring Steve Wright to court, ultimately secure a guilty plea and a conviction last week for the murder of Victoria Hole, her abduction and the attempted abduction of Emily Doherty.
For years, Emily doubted herself.
All those years I've been saying I gave the number plate, but did I? Maybe I didn't.
There are other unsolved cases where women have disappeared, with speculation Wright may have been involved. The police say he's not an official suspect, but they'd welcome any new information.
The conclusion of the case has brought some relief for Emily.
All that time I've wanted to make sure Vicky's parents knew that I had tried and I did call it in when it happened.
But for Vicky's family, nothing changes the life sentence that they're enduring. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
So to come on the UK tonight, more weather warnings in place as the UK sees one of the wettest starts of the year on record, with even more rain on the way. Now, one of the big questions, will it ever stop raining? Parts of the UK have seen rain every single day so far this year, and forecasters say it is not over yet. More than 90 areas face flooding as heavy downpours drench parts of the country today, with further weather warnings likely to come into force. This the scene at Worcester Cricket Ground earlier on today. No stranger, of course, to flooding, but this winter has been particularly wet, and yet there's more rain for Worcester to come as well. Well, joining us now, co-director of Flooded People UK, Lewis Ramirez, and climate scientist at the University of Oxford, Dr. Chloe Brimicombe. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on what has been, I mean, in the UK, we love to talk about the weather, particularly the bad weather, and it has rained every day since the start of the year, and boy, don't we know it. Dr. Brimicombe, perhaps you can tell us why. I keep hearing about the jet stream. You know, I bring people the weather here every night and I talk about the jet stream. But what exactly does that mean, and why are we seeing so much rain?
Yes, so the jet stream is a fast-moving body of air that sits above where we live in the atmosphere, basically, and this is what drives our weather regime. So what we've seen this year is a blocking high-pressure system, so that's settled air, and unfortunately for us, it's over northeastern Europe, and this means that we have wet weather coming up across the Atlantic, but then also coming up over the eastern part of the UK and the southwest of the UK. And this is the places that have seen the wettest weather at the start of this year. So we've had one of the wettest Januaries on record for the UK as a whole, in the top 4 in the UK, we think. And some places in the UK in January and then moving into February have had their wettest sort of winter period on record. And we're currently looking to see whether this period of weather is likely to end, because it's been prolonged, and we know that these sort of conditions are increasing in likelihood in the UK and also over Central Europe with climate change. So it's interesting to see how this plays out this year, but also in years to come, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's utterly miserable for anyone caught up in the scenes that we were just showing on our screens just there. Not just miserable, but damaging as well. We'll talk to Lewis in that about that in just a moment. But in terms of the forecast for when it will end, because that's, you know, what people want to know, are we talking days, weeks?
Yes, so the thing with blocking high pressure systems is we'll be familiar with the summer and when we have like more drought heat conditions as a result of this over the UK, very difficult to forecast the end of. So what we think at the moment is in the middle of February, we should have moved out of this weather pattern completely. So we're looking towards the end of this week into next week. However, we're now looking at more of a familiar pattern where we have rain moving off the Atlantic, but hitting more the west of the UK. So that means that there's respite for some, but we could still see some rain, but hopefully we'll have more sunny spells as well, which definitely think we all are looking forward to.
Yeah, very much so. OK, mid-Feb is the date for the diary, so not long to go, maybe a week at best. Liz Ramirez, co-director of Flooded People UK. What is exactly your organisation does for people? Because as I said, you know, we moan about this kind of weather, it's miserable, it's depressing, but it actually, for some, it's damaging.
Yeah, exactly. What we'll do for people is connect them with other people who have gone through the same thing, because flooding is, in reality, when water, often mixed with sewage, enters your house, it becomes a many months long nightmare that devastates your mental health. It can take away your sense of safety in the home. The financial consequences are actually very significant as well. And it can be a dramatically lonely experience for people because there is not that much understanding around. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll put you in a group that is caring, that is informative, and that is full of people who have been through the same thing. And they will be in a position not just to advise with the practical things, but to tell you that you are not in fact crazy, that this is incredibly hard, incredibly difficult. And hopefully for many people as well, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So we can hopefully supply a bit of hope as well. But it does leave me very, very nervous to hear that this weather is going to continue for many weeks, because for a lot of people, these are weeks of sleepless nights that they've got in stock.
Yeah, indeed. And like you said, there are some communities that go through this annually. Flooding isn't a new thing, and we've covered it extensively here on Sky News. Those people who live on floodplains have trouble getting insurance, fighting to get flood defences properly put in place in their area. What kind of numbers of people have been coming to you since the start of the year? Because, as we said, no one's been unaffected by this, but some areas have been hit particularly bad. Some people experiencing this for the first time.
Yeah, it's actually remarkably difficult to get accurate numbers of the number of properties impacted. I think the Environment Agency put out a press release saying that it was 300. Since Storm Chandra, we've had a steady stream of people in quite serious situations entering our online community and coming to us for help. But, beyond your immediate impact, there are all the near misses, there are all the roads, there is in Somerset in particular, all of the farmland that's being inundated, there are the businesses, the local economies, and so on and so forth. And so once all of these things stack up, you actually get a very significant number of places that are impacted in a variety of different ways.
Yeah. What have you learned through your organisation about the support that there is out there for communities who are affected by this? As I said, we saw Worcestershire there. Some places just annually flooded. Others are just starting to experience this. And, as we were just talking there with Dr. Chloe, this weather pattern, is going to come around again. This seems to be more and more the norm, doesn't it? What kind of support is there for people? Are local councils as prepared as they should be in terms of helping these communities? No,
they're not. Look, we've always had flooding, but we have never had flooding at quite this level of regular intensity. So what is now a normal year would have previously been considered quite a bad year, actually. And what's particularly terrifying is that trend is not stopping. It's getting worse. Climate change is a tough problem to solve, but we are not, the policy response to this is tepid at best. I've heard off the record from flood risk managers and councils saying that councillors don't even know their own responsibilities. Councils are understaffed on this level. The entire system for dealing with this is not built for an environment in which this happens at this intensity. And while I wish I could say that we were taking steps in the right direction, the evidence that we can see from government is actually that we're taking steps in the wrong direction right now. So something has to give at some point.
Are people feeling abandoned by official channels when this happens to them? They are abandoned.
They are abandoned. There is very, very little help coming your way. So my colleagues spent, I think, 3 hours on the phone trying to talk to various risk management authorities to figure out where we could signpost people to in different parts of the Southwest. And we ended up just not signposting, because if he can go through that and he's a seasoned flood professional and it doesn't even yield to anything, imagine someone who's got 3 feet of sewage inside their house and their likelihood of success on that front.
Yeah, it's absolutely desperate for those families affected. Liz Ramirez, co-director of Flooded People UK, thank you so much. And just a final word, if I can, from you, Dr. Chloe Birmingham from the University of Oxford there. In terms of this weather pattern, are you and your colleagues anticipating that this will become the norm in years to come, this prolonged, heavy rain that, as we hear there, is sort of not just damaging, but devastating some lives?
Yes, I mean, I know that all of us as the climate science community and also colleagues of mine that are hydrologists have been worried about this for many years. And I agree with what the other speakers said. There isn't enough of a policy response at the moment for flooding or any extreme weather in the UK. And it is devastating the lives of real people here in the UK. And it worries us as climate scientists. And the only way to solve this is to have a proper informed policy response from what the robust scientific evidence is telling us. And we're now living it as well.
Dr. Chloe Birmingham, climate scientist at University of Oxford, and Lewis Ramirez there from Flooded People UK. Thank you so much for talking to us tonight. I really appreciate this. This is a really important topic for so many people in the UK at the moment. Thank you. So to come on the programme. On a day of frustration for Team GB at the Winter Olympics, teenager Mia Brooks took centre stage in the snowboard big air final. Was this the jump was enough to get her into medal contention?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist.
You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
Well, Rob is here for a look at the sport, and there's been so much talk of matters away from the action itself when it comes to the Winter Olympics. But they are in full flow today, particularly for Team GB.
Yeah, and disappointing that you've only just missed out on selection and you're having to go skiing elsewhere this weekend. Otherwise, you would have been in that, team yourself, I'm sure. Look, the Olympics, Winter Olympics and politics are always never too far away, are they? And we've seen political protests out in Italy ahead of the Games, the booing of J.D. Vance as well. And also you might have seen that slightly peculiar story from last week about penis enlargement in ski jumpers, and it's hold it together, come on.
You know what, that's the first time I've heard the P word on the news. It was called lots of other things, groin enhancements. But I'm glad you went for it. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, exactly, for those ski jumpers. And whether that does improve performance in terms of skiing.
We still haven't found out, I don't think.
No time at all to get into the nuts and bolts of that. Maybe good news. Let's just have a look back at the action from today in Italy, shall we? Perfect, thank you very much.
A footballer's life is all about moving. I never had a problem with that because I was the one that was progressing in my football career.
The Crazy Gang's welcoming committee were making sure their new arrival enjoyed a warm welcome.
I'd had a small arthroscopy operation, and at that particular time there was a lot of clubs interested in me.
But in a last-minute twist, Wimbledon learned John Hartson would not be moving as Spurs.
John Hartson was last week tipped to be on his way across South London for £5 million. That seems a dead deal.
I don't want to do any more medicals, to be honest.
I can't pass a medical because of this knee.
A downbeat John Hartson was rushed out of Ibrox today, having been given the worst possible news.
We did not believe he was at the correct fitness at that particular time to go straight into Champions League.
Very seldom you see a player
in the building, walking around at a club, and the deal isn't done.
I'm starting to question myself. I'm starting to think, well, where do I go from here?
The best medical he ever failed. I knew about his injuries, but that didn't matter to me because I think John had played 20 consecutive games for Coventry.
I was going to an absolute giant in Celtic Football Club.
Another season, another club for John Hartson.
So I've proved that my knee's fine and my fitness is good.
This was my complete say. I think he wanted to prove his fitness, and I think he wanted to prove Rangers wrong.
And here's Hartson!
Celtic fans hold John in the highest regard.
Incredible, Sir Ronaldo.
Celtic Football Club, to me, is a very special place.
These are the two strikers that have grabbed George Graham's eye, and at quite a cost. John Hartson, the teenager, arrives at Highbury in return.
I mean, I'm still reeling from that Lindsay Vonn story. That was just, I mean, we were talking about it last week, and I'm amazed that she was actually allowed to ski.
Yeah.
But anyway, so many questions that will open up that we haven't, again, got time to get into. But disappointing day for Team GB, but the Winter Olympics, still much more to come. Are we in contention for any other medals?
Yeah, there is a fair amount of optimism that Team GB can get somewhere close to the 5 medals, which is the record from Sochi 2014 and Pyeongchang 4 years later. The curlers have that opportunity to get that bronze medal in the mixed doubles. They are the reigning Olympic champions in the women event, albeit with a different skip this time around. The men were silver medalists 4 years ago. The skeleton, 2 options in the men's skeleton. They have been banned from wearing the helmets they wanted to because they don't quite fit the protocol. But Matt Weston is a 2-time world champion, and Marcus Wyatt, his teammate, is also a decent medal hope for Team GB. And then real hopes for Lila Fear and Lewis Gibson in the figure skating. Could become the first medalist in that event since Torvill and Dean in 1994. If just the fact that they're British is not enough to support them, their rendition is Spice Girls themed. So I think that's enough reason to get behind them.
In fact, didn't Lewis Gibson, his wife, put on social media, if I can get a Spice Girl to comment on this routine before the Olympics, I'm going to get him to cook dinner for a month. And Mel B only responded.
Good on her. Good on her.
I like that. So that's good. That's
worth more than a medal.
Yeah,
arguably.
Exactly. Can you imagine if he comes back without a medal and has to cook dinner for a month? Eek! What motivation. Rob, thank you very much. See you again soon. Right, let's take a quick look at the weather, shall we?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
There'll be further potentially disruptive rain this week, and it's going to turn colder with wintry hazards possible by the weekend. Before then, Northern Ireland and the north of Ireland are looking wet this evening. Southwestern Britain can expect some increasingly light and patchy rain. Elsewhere, the chance of some drizzly outbreaks, but northwestern Scotland looks dry and clear. It's going to be rather murky tonight, fog in places. Central and southern parts will mostly dry up, but Cork and Kerry will turn wet later.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
That's all from us here on the UK Tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Yalta's up next.